We're going to begin with headlines. I think one really good piece of advice that we would have newsrooms keep in mind is that they should write headlines. Imagine it's all your readers are going to see. Now, I know you don't want to hear that because, and I know I've worked in online newsrooms before, it's very nice when you can see that your readers have read right to the very end. But unfortunately, people are flipping through social media and things are happening very fast. So worst comes to worst, you have to imagine that this is all that the readers are going to see. People have a short attention span. Often this is the case. People are just scrolling through social media. They're not actually going to click or read on your wonderful article. So whatever you're going to say in your headline is going to be incredibly important. So the message you convey, the emotion you're invoking in your readers, just write headlines just as if that was all your audience was going to read. So we recommend that newsrooms avoid sensational and alarmist headlines and that type of language, things like we have here, lethal and catastrophe and, coronavirus cases nearly double with no end in sight. That sort of thing is obviously going to spark a strong emotion. We don't want to freak people out. It's actually not helpful to use this type of alarming language, even if it tends to draw more clicks. Public health officials and epidemiologists agree that the best thing the public can do right now is to stay calm, to take preventative measures like wash your hands, practice social distancing. But in general, things that are just trying to scare people are not so helpful in the long run. So here we have some headlines that we think are much more responsible. They're giving practical tips. In particular, I like this one, 10 lessons from Asia on how to live with the coronavirus outbreak. Now, we need to push back on certain language as well. There's been a lot of racist language that we've seen, and Australia unfortunately picked up on this fairly early on in this coronavirus outbreak. So we talked to professors and other experts who agree that one of the best things newsrooms can do right now is to give people a sense of control, because in times of uncertainty, it makes them more anxious and prone and vulnerable to this health information like fake cures, fake preventative information. So these headlines that we've got here on the screen are helpful because they give readers actions that they can take and tell them not to panic. What you can do right now about coronavirus. If you stay home, this is how you can make it safer, those sorts of headlines. Another thing that we recommend for headlines is to avoid derogatory language. Just because there is very irrational or outlandish ideas out there, if you're going to describe it as bizarre or insane, you're at risk of alienating your readers or triggering what psychologists call the worldview backfire effect, where if you threaten someone's worldview, that causes them to double down on their beliefs instead of agreeing and being open to this information. So they're not going to agree, oh yes, I'm insane. That type of language tends to write them off. It's really easy for us, and I've had to stop myself sometimes too. It's really easy to be derogatory or, make a joke about some things because things are irrational. But if you imagine, and Victoria has a great example, if you imagine you're talking to someone in your family, an elderly member of your family or your mum or something, and you have to be polite to your mum. So, regardless of, they might have some rumor that they might have heard, avoiding ice cream or drink garlic and saline water. If you tell them, hey, I've Googled this, it doesn't look like that was really a Harvard study, even though someone's saying it was. This is actually the real context. This is, here's a debunk article that you can share with them and help them to avoid it. So when newsrooms think about how to craft their headlines for social media and for search, our advice used to be, for all headlines, focus on the facts, avoid keywords from the rumor because you don't want to amplify the rumor. Now, we still stand by that, of course. We've fine-tuned it even more though. So we now differentiate between headlines that readers will find through stumbling and the headlines that readers will find through searching. So the key difference between those two, stumbling is just, something that you'll find through your algorithmic feed like Facebook or Instagram, Twitter. So you're just scrolling through in your timeline, you see a headline, you know, coronavirus oil collapse to raise 5 trillion from US stocks in this case. You know, you're scrolling through, you're stumbling through. It's perhaps not so purpose driven as sometimes in a search. Of course, you can still use search functions in Twitter to look for specific tweets and specific words, but I don't think most of your readers are doing that. I think they're just encountering their headlines as they scroll through and stumble upon things, and they'll be following certain topics and things in their feed, and the algorithm will pick up on that. So that's what we call stumbling upon a headline. On the other hand, there's headlines that readers will find through searching. So going on Google, Bing, or YouTube, which is more and more being used as a search engine. For headlines that people are finding through search, what we're discovering is when people are searching for it, they already know about the rumor. So the amplification's not such a big an issue for that one. So in headlines that they're searching through or they're surfacing through the search function on Google or YouTube. So in that case, if the readers already know about the rumor and they're searching for it, your job as a newsroom is to fill that void and get your debunk in front of them. So for instance, someone like my friend's mum is searching for that coronavirus ice cream rumor. She's heard that there's a rumor that ice cream needs to be avoided. So you don't want coronavirus transmitted to you via ice cream. So she's getting headlines like these ones that we've got here. The first couple, not so important, might not really be what she's actually looking for, but I just wanted to point you to that third one. UNICEF warns of scam coronavirus messages circulating through social media. So with that one, she can say, okay, I'll avoid ice cream. Avoiding ice cream won't actually help. And I really like the way UNICEF have worded this one, because they've got the words of the rumor in there, but they're still not repeating the rumor. So they're giving answers to people. So, warns of a scam coronavirus message circulating through social media. And then when you click into that, there's a subheadline that's got the ice cream there. So that's being picked up there. There's another example here. If you look at the second one, KHOU, I think that's a local Houston TV station. So can you get the coronavirus from packages from China? So again, they've turned to the rumor and they've turned this rumor into a question, because it's helped them to get their results quite high, because people are searching coronavirus in packages. So if someone searches, can I get coronavirus from packages on YouTube, they'll get stuff that's not relevant, but they'll also get this one here, and that's turning it into a question for them. And you can start to think about filling this data void. So newsrooms might wonder, how will we know what topics we should be writing around? So what we recommend is Google Trends. So, and I'm sure, I think a lot of the newsrooms are probably using this anyway and familiar with Google Trends and how this works. I'll take you through just quickly. I think this is the one for New Zealand, takes you through the area. It could be quite interesting, as Helen mentioned, with could be some queries about, the North Island, the South Island could be coming up today. These are some previous ones that, coronavirus, Italy, first symptoms, third case of coronavirus in New Zealand from a little while ago. So those were the sorts of things coming up there. If we look into Australia now, you can look into, what were the areas of interest. You can divide it up into different states and different regions as well. Keep going through. You can see, when Tom Hanks and coronavirus was trending, Bali, is coronavirus a pandemic? Then we can look into Western Australia for our Western Australia friends, and break things down even further. This isn't the current one, I just want to remind you, but something that has been quite handy as well, that we've seen curated, and that's useful for newsrooms, and you've probably seen this already, is that Google Trends has curated country-specific coronavirus trends pages. So they can tell you what your readers are asking for in your regions. I've got the links there, but if you just go to, or even you Google Trends Australia coronavirus, that will take you to the page and there's the New Zealand one as well. So Google have curated that for both Australia and New Zealand. This is what the landing page for Google Trends Australia looks like for coronavirus there. I think there's some good tips there and some things that can help you there. So I just wanted to go back to just thinking about the filling a data void. So, you know, there's different headlines and things when you think about what people are searching. Things like coronavirus and packages are things that aren't normally searched for. So if you get an idea through trends what they're searching for, and that can help you then fill that data void, so you can, you know, write a story, you know, go ahead and open that package from China, you know, and actually fill it with quality content. With images, we treat them similar to headlines. You can assume that people are only going to be looking at the image and not looking at the caption underneath or read through the article underneath. Again, on social media, you're going to see a headline, whatever you put in your tweet or your post, and the picture underneath. Oftentimes, they're not going to click on it. So again, we've got this responsibility to think about what's the message we're going to send, what are the emotions you're invoking in your readers. So this is a picture of empty shelves. This happens to be in a California store. We've seen the exact same images across our stores here in Australia. And we need to think, well, what good does it do now if we keep sending this out? As I mentioned earlier, there are social neuroscience professors such as NYU's Professor Jay Van Gabel had a really good tweet last week about how studies have shown that if you want to discourage certain types of behavior, but then, you know, in your message, you're showing a picture of people engaging in that type of behavior, even if your words are saying, don't do this, it makes it appear normal though. So pictures have this great effect in shaping the social norms. So if the media is reporting on panic buying, and you know, this is not an easy thing to do, but we have to think about, well, what are all these photos that we're sharing and showing about people grabbing toilet paper and panic buying? Because the psychological effect is that people think, oh, well, I'm seeing this, maybe I should be doing this too. So the headlines and the photo might get a lot of clicks, but is it really the responsible thing to do? And so we're reassessing how to do this. And Claire brought up a really good example about, oh, and here's some images as well, actually, with, you know, people in hazmat suits, and, you know, it's this scary, you get a lot more scary looking photos as well, and these Armageddon looking photos too. But Claire brought up a really good example about vaccines. So this is one, and I know when I've worked in newsrooms, you're always needing, you know, stock photos of certain things, which are an issue in themselves. But if you use the analogy of vaccines, you know, a lot of times there's not really great imagery around that. Pictures of babies crying, screaming. But this was an example from Self magazine where they tried to turn it into the positive message, you know, messages of hope and, you know, the good that it does rather than alarm. And I want to share also this amazing example from the Spin-Off in New Zealand, who I think are joining us today. They have their examples here on how to flatten the curve. And if you have a look at the image here, it's really easy. It's accessible, it's understandable for readers, it's very shareable on social media, what they've done. The visuals really draw the eye in there. It's been tweeted, it's been reworked and cited by Washington Post. I think, you know, a lot of international newsrooms as well. I think even Barack Obama tweeted about it. So yeah, I don't know if you guys from New Zealand, if you're on the line, wanted to add any more about this one. And also just our, we've got some guidelines too on headlines and images that are part of our 13 tips for reporting responsibly on COVID-19. Just our last section, which is visualization and data viz. So Carlotta Dotter is our senior data journalist for First Draft, and she's based in the UK. And she's given us some great examples of responsible charts that she wanted to share with us. And she looked where the general public and data experts have put together some really useful tools and resources. And we've got this list that we'll make available to you afterwards. It's on the current slide too. For example, this slide with the dashboard shows where Tableau or Data Wrapper, their online libraries for charts and maps, and they've made available for everyone a list of really well designed, accurate charts and maps for your reports that you can embed on COVID-19 cases. We also have the coronavirus data stream, which is basically a spreadsheet with every single case registered all over the world from several sources. And there's a number of different organizations from different countries that have made that available. If you look at Resource Hub, there are a lot of resource hubs online that make a list of things, for example, JSON files, data. They give more context on the data, data visualization, everything you might need if you want to give a quick data viz to go along with the article. So for example, another great example, and I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with this. I think I've seen a lot of you tweeting this and using this in social. The Johns Hopkins University is maintaining this excellent coronavirus tracking website. It gathers information from multiple data points, and they've pulled this together on the dashboard, showing every single bit of data available at the moment, showing the number of recovered as well, which I think was a point that we wanted to really bring home as well. It's not just focusing on all the deaths all over the world, but you can interact with this and see, the numbers who've recovered there too. But also we just wanted to point out, and Carlotta just wanted to point out, that sometimes these numbers, even though everyone loves the numbers, they can sometimes be a bit meaningless, because we need to know things like, are people being tested the same way, and to get more of an idea on how people are recovering, and to put it into perspective and certain percentages as well in how things are shaping up. I'll show you a graph on that in a moment, but I just wanted to show you this Corona tracker as well, which is another one that Carlotta recommends. So over 400 volunteers from across the globe, ranging from data scientists to medical professionals, designers, developers, general public. They've put this together, and it basically acts as a portal for the public to keep track of the latest news developments about COVID-19, alongside collecting data for further analysis. This has used natural language processing to analyze trending content and identify meaningful topics over various news sources, social media platforms, and prior to, so they bring all that together, and then the team will verify it. And then this is just the data wrapper embeddable charts that I mentioned earlier. Some really nice, reliable charts that you can use there. So just a couple of quick words about data viz and some things that we've seen with some of our own analysis. Data, it can be really misleading. It can be misinterpreted. It can be misrepresented by the users. It's a problem because it looks so seductive and persuasive when we associate all these numbers and the data science, and it feels objective and precise. But studies have shown that the human brain is inclined to believe information that's presented visually. So we need to think carefully about things like our design. What is the data that we're trying to display here? Is it the right data or not? Misinterpretation is a big problem as well. How are things being represented? For example, here's two maps representing coronavirus in China. The one on the left is the one that shows, well, it's got a few problems there. So if just the rates of the numbers are being represented, then it's a bit of an issue. We need to see the rates based on the population. So like the one on the right bases it on, it says 111 cases per 100,000 people. And also it doesn't have those sensationalist color choices there too. So you need to think about, if you're using absolute values and the raw data, are you putting it into perspective? Are you, making this a better representation, rather than just saying 65,000 people? Well, that's a very different perspective, if you're thinking from, you know, one very densely populated area versus another. And there's a couple of golden rules in cartography that I've, you know, just learned recently as well. When we were out of Australia, we helped to produce an article about mapping issues. And one is that you can't map totals using a choropleth thematic map. So that's like, you know, these types of maps that you're seeing with the states and territories just marked out there. So, because it makes it look like, you know, can you imagine if we had, you know, so many cases in, you know, the state of New South Wales, you know, which are certainly not in the high hundreds at all. But if you mark in red the whole state, it just gives a very different representation, different idea of what would actually be going on. There's one other example too, where you can use dot density maps. And these, I mean, these can be misleading as well, but again, this will help to explain, you know, you can click on there and you can see, well, you know, what is it in relation to, you know, how many cases per the province, that sort of thing. So there's just a couple of things to consider there. Things can be misleading if they're poorly designed or just too convoluted. People just, they need something quick and easy to digest. But hence my next slide, which is the problem when it's too quick and easy to digest. You know, things like this have failed, like this flight map that I think most of you are all aware of, really well-known example. Our Australian Bureau included this in our analysis a couple of weeks ago. This was not how the virus was spreading, and a lot of people initially did actually look and do a reverse image search and go, oh, it's just flight routes, you know, international flight routes. We looked a little bit further because we just thought, yeah, there's something else, you know, what's going on here. And we looked at the research. I read the research paper that went with it, which didn't actually take that long. There were no maps. There weren't these types of visualizations in this research, which it was a preprint. So, you know, it was a quick research paper that hadn't had the peer review, but it actually seemed okay. But unfortunately, when they tweeted their research, they just used this screenshot as a just kind of like a generic stock image type of thing. And it was actually from another paper that they had written. So they had, you know, taken the flight data routes and were writing a completely different story, you know, sometime earlier, and, you know, did the graphics and the color. And they just happened to have it in their stock, you know, because that was from their other research. And they attached this just when they tweeted out their report. Now, newsroom, I mean, you know, to be fair, it's fast, it's all happening. People are, you know, jumping on trying to get the information out. So I think if we have this idea that always be, you know, cautious, reverse image search, anything that looks too good to be true absolutely is. We know all of this. It'd be great to be getting this message out to the public as well. I think with this one as well, the researchers in the UK that put out that paper and this map, they did take it down off Twitter. I did ask if they could perhaps make more of a correction about that. I'm not sure if that happened, but we've certainly done that with our articles as well. So pictures like this, they scare people. You know, they're so visual. And, you know, we've got a situation like this public health crisis that numbers and rates are changing quickly day to day. So data visualizations also can go out of date really quickly. So actually Claire Wardle had a suggestion that we need, you know, we're talking about collaboration. We need to try to also include in that data visualizations, and we need some standardized language around visuals and visualizations. You know, so whether it's, we're all going to think about dates, data viz, you know, newsrooms need to think about how they're doing this. One thing I've noticed is like, and I think it's The Guardian that put across, and sometimes I'll be searching things, and they make quite clear that this is an article from 6 months ago, that sort of thing. So I think when we're thinking about our data visualizations, that type of thinking works really well, and it's really obvious when I've seen those. So yeah, we've got a summary of just things to think about with, and I'm not sure if my screen's covering that up a bit, sorry, but we've got in our resources, think about, read the headline, the description, the legend, the source, any other labels. You've got to make it really easy for your readers. Who made the map and why? Have you tried reverse image searching it to see if it's appeared online before? That's more if you're the audience member. What kind of data is it representing? Where does it come from? Check the size of the countries, counties, or anything else. Is it the wrong size or distorted, which I was alluding to before with those types of maps? How is the map designed? Does it use symbols or areas? Are there problems with how the design communicates the story? We saw this in the bushfires as well, which I'm sure you're all aware of. So things like, so these are the tips that, these are actually the tips for the audiences, really, but we've got to think about this as well. Are we helping our audiences there too? Victoria, did you want to add anything about the data viz, or have you got any questions that are emerging there?
No, so for the data viz, like really the two big things that I took away from the session that Carlotta ran last week was that, the using like the use of like colors, also like similar to like headlines and imagery, like if you're using like a really like aggressive like red or like orange like color scheme, it's a very emotive color. So to kind of think about like what sorts of like emotions like that might trigger in readers versus using like calmer colors. And then also what Anne, you were just saying from Claire about data visualizations, especially in quickly developing stories like the new coronavirus, like can just become out of date like within the hour. So that is definitely like something to keep in mind when you're making those for readers, and having a way to clearly label that. But we do have a comment from Kate in the chat saying, love Flip's idea on collaboration. I'm also wondering if there could be an agreed and combined effort across newsrooms to inform the public about where to look for verified news. For example, TikTok has become a popular resource with younger generations. However, I understand it has minimal editors to fact check content. And so it would be helpful to have some tips on how to look for the right information and where. So that is actually a really great a really, really great idea. And that's something that, Anne, if you want to talk a little bit more about the First Draft and Coronavirus portal that we just launched, that is a place where we have tried to like come up with some like sources of information and sources of quality content for journalists.
Yeah, so I've got those links here on the screen now, and I think we'll make this all available for you too. So coronavirus resources for reporters. We've got our resource hub on our main First Draft website. It'll look like this. So go and check that out. There is a lot of information there. Interesting that you should talk about TikTok. I had a conversation with a teenager this morning about something that was actually really informative and good. And I said, oh yeah, where did you get that from? Oh, it was on TikTok. And I went, okay. And then I was like, right, but who on TikTok and where did they get the information? So that's a very important place, for getting the message out. And it's like, we're starting to see these, the PSA, the public service announcements from the government, wash your hands, that sort of thing everywhere. Gee, it'd be great if we could, obviously we don't have the budgets for putting up, posters and things around the place, but gee, it would be great if we can have this concerted effort with the media and with journalists. As I said at the start, this is a real time, we've been talking about trust in media for a long time. I just think I haven't heard people really that much blaming the media at the moment here. I mean, there has been, of course, some, and there's sensational headlines, that sort of thing. But generally speaking, I think from what I've seen for most people in Australia, they're criticising all the misinformation they're seeing on social media. So I think if we can keep up what we're doing and, tone down some of the, think about some of the images and headlines. I know I'm speaking to the converted on this, generally on this webinar, but I think that is a really good opportunity for us to do this and think about what we're sending out in social. And as I was saying, fill those data voids, whether it's, whether you're writing an article that's more of, it might be something that'll end up being an evergreen content for your website that people will find through search. That's one way. But the big fast and furious way is, what are you putting up on your socials, and include your productions for your TikTok if you need, include what you're putting out there on Facebook. We're finding it really interesting to have tips sent in to us, and I know this was a method, a strategy that was used during the election. You have tip lines and things. What are you seeing in WhatsApp? What are you seeing in your different diasporas, whether it's WeChat, that sort of thing as well. Send that into the newsrooms so that then you can flood out the fact checks and the reliable information and get onto that
Right.
quite fast in the methods that we've mentioned before.